Good evening and welcome to our work session business meeting of March 5th, 2024. Please stand for the pledge. We're being led by Mrs. Westervelt's ninth period science research class.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right.
It's nice to see the high school represented. So we're reconvening the work session business meeting. We convened at 6:30 and went into executive session, so we're reconvening. I'd like to ask the board if they would agree to moving new business item number 4 to right directly after the consent agenda.
So move.
Is that okay? Okay, so I'd like to open it up for public comment on any of the agenda items. Okay, not seeing any public comment. I'd like to move to the consent agenda. Mr. Oliverio, number 1, please.
Yes. I just faded out. 1 second. I'll be
That's all
right
right.
there. Here we go. Resolved on the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to approve the consent agenda items 2 through 11 as presented to the board at this meeting.
Second.
Questions or comments?
The consent agenda includes board approval of the previous meeting minutes, updated 23-24 substitute listing, CSE, CPSE placements, approval amending additional hours and unpaid time for certain staff members, approving the superintendent attending the New York State Council of School Superintendents Conference, accepting a grant in the amount of $500 from ExxonMobil, approving an agreement with Putnam County Real Property Tax Services to provide tax services to the school district, amending the appointment of the 23-24 reviewing official for school meal programs. We're transferring the duties of this job from Alicia Hunter to Jean Cesario. We're amending the appointment of a long-term substitute teacher. Barbara Dower will remain longer than originally anticipated as teaching high school French. We're approving joint bidding resolution with Southern Westchester BOCES that'll go through June of 2025.
Thank you for that summary. Any other questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? The resolution passes. I know that to move item 4 up to now, he's going to miss the budget presentation, which is so riveting. But we're going to do it anyway. So, Mr. O, could you do the number 4 of
Yes.
the new business items?
Resolved on the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to appoint Benjamin Dorland to a 4-year probationary term as a music teacher commencing on September 1st, 2024 and terminating on August 31st, 2028 in the 10-year area of music at the elementary school on Step 4 MA of the PVFT salary schedule. Mr. Dorland holds music initial certification. Now, in order to be eligible for appointment to tenure, said employee must receive at least 3 APPR ratings of effective or highly effective during the 4-year probationary period and may not receive an ineffective rating in the final year of probation.
Second.
Questions or comments?
So Ben joins us with several years teaching experience, both in the city at the Success Academy and more locally at the Sherbrooke International School. I know he impressed throughout the interview process. Margaret was very excited after meeting him, and she wanted to send him right over to my office so I could hire him on the spot. I did ask him how much he paid for his references, because I don't think I've ever seen more impressive references. But we are wholeheartedly excited and to welcome Ben to join our team. Thank you.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? The resolution passes. Welcome.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you very much.
We can't wait. Thank you.
Don't mess it up now.
Thank you so much.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
So Ben, the 2 students at the end are president and vice president of the Music Honor Society? No? just of the,
Just members.
just, they're awesome singers. You miss them, but we've got great ones coming up, so.
I'm very excited to help play in some big bands and be part of your productions and everything at the high school level. Really excited.
Thank you. Thank you.
Excellent.
Charlie, you want to do your solo now?
Come on, a cappella, you can do it. Okay, students, now that we've embarrassed you, we'll ask you for your report.
Okay, I might struggle to read Charlie's handwriting, so. So last Friday, our girls basketball team won Section 1 game.
Yep.
And right now, I'm not sure if they won or not, but they're at the sub-regional basketball game.
They won big
They won.
by like 25 points.
Ah,
So they play
congratulations.
now Saturday, 11 o'clock at Yorktown against
Wow.
whatever team wins from Long Island.
Wow, congratulations. Right now, we're having science research poster practice in the library, and that's getting the science research kids ready for the WESF. Not sure what that is, but it's next weekend. The History Club is going to Boston on Thursday. Tomorrow is the Tri-M Honor Society induction, and Charlie and I will be performing. Oh. Also tomorrow we have an IB cast project during school. So it's Brianna Foodie's Wellness Fair at lunch. So there's gonna be some yoga, some dogs, therapy dogs, just some mental health training, some art therapy, and just good wellness training and tips. So looking forward to that. And next week, there's Seal of Biliteracy bilingual presentations on the 11th and the 12th.
Thank you. How's the play coming?
It's great. I'm so excited.
We're excited too.
Yeah.
Okay. Did they steal your thunder, Dr. Rolfe?
Yeah, I don't really have much else. So my contribution was the update about the girls' basketball team. Yeah, so the girls were successful. It was actually a very close game in the first half. I know Nye scored back-to-back three-pointers right before halftime, and then they really ran away with it in the second half, and won by, I think it was over 25 points. So they play again on Saturday, 11 o'clock at Yorktown High School is their next game, and if they win there, then they go up to the state tournament at Hudson Valley Community College. So I do want to know Eswar Ordonez placed 6th in wrestling at the state tournament. Our cheerleading team finished 3rd in Section 1, won in the bronze medalist. And then our indoor track, where the league champions, girls ice hockey, of which we have one student participate on a merged team, were the champions, and gymnastics Division II champions. Again, we have one student who participates. Science research students are upstairs presenting their posters. Had an opportunity to stop in and check it out, and most of them I don't even understand the title. So unfortunately, I'm not there for them to explain to me what they're doing. Our elementary school science fair is tomorrow night, so encourage everyone to come out. Tri-M Honor Society also tomorrow. Sealed by Literacy presentations. Upcoming Superintendent's Conference Day, and then our middle school musical, Anastasia, our elementary school musical, Suzuko Kids, our high school musical, Rent, and the high school cast presentations. And we have student artwork on display in Garrison now. So they're just wrapping up Katona, and now we have student artwork on display in Garrison.
And we did the Aspire, was that this week, last week?
Oh, the unveiling of the Aspire poster?
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of those. I've never heard a student talk as in depth about their
I agree.
thought process and the work, and it was really impressive to see.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Because sometimes when you look at a painting, you bring your own understanding, but you don't always understand what the artist was trying to say, or how her or his life affected the way they decided to present their vision. So she was really very clear on how she did it. I'm sorry, I've forgotten her name.
Mina Francis.
Mia.
Right, Nina.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay, now for our budget presentation.
All right, good evening, everyone. So while I have the privilege to start this presentation, I do want to acknowledge the tremendous amount of work that Jill and her team have put into this presentation, and I will shortly turn over the reins to her. But really, almost this entire presentation was put together by her. So as we do each year and we begin to build a budget, we keep in mind that the students are really at the center of all we do. So I thought it was important to recognize the district's new core values, because this is really what is the purpose of everything we do, right? And this is the intent of what our school budget will support. And if you notice, the first core is community, right? And recognizing that it takes a community in order to support our schools and our students. We very much appreciate the work of our building leaders, all they do. But really, this budget is about preparing our future leaders and our students to become leaders within our school. A quick look at our enrollment. We have a total of 1,481 students. The elementary school, we anticipate a decline of approximately 52 students. The main reason for this is we're happy to have a very large class moving over to the middle school, 130-something students. And right now, we anticipate a very small incoming kindergarten class. So really, the delta between those two numbers is what's really driving that factor right there. We are looking to add one teacher. That also offsets the teacher who will be taking on the role of behaviorist at our elementary school. Other staff remains the same. Middle school, we anticipate 3 new students. So while they're getting a large class, they're also losing a large class. So they're pretty status quo. In the high school, we expect to have 15 extra students. So again, they're gaining a pretty large class moving over. Just a quick look at our administrative offices. So we currently have 21.25 staff. 0.25 is a part-time person, not a part of a person. So that includes 8 administrators and 13.25 support staff members, and there's no net change there. We're not increasing any staff at the district office. Transportation, as you're aware, we've added several members to our transportation department this year. It's brought it up to 19 staff members, which include 3 administrative and support positions, 11 drivers, and 5 monitors. Now, there's no new transportation staff built into this budget, but there's a little caveat on the bottom saying, once we get pricing for our new bus contract, it may be economical for us to hire more of our own drivers and save us money as opposed to giving the contracted bus provider extra routes. So while there's nothing built in, we could easily transfer money that was otherwise earmarked for the contractor into our own staff if that's economically viable. So really, our budget's broken down into 3 main categories. We want to support our academics, our programs, our professional development, continuing to improve everything that we do within our schools. Obviously, staff and contractual expenses is a huge part of our budget, and we have those obligations we must continue to meet. And transportation and facilities. Transportation's a big one. You're going to hear a lot about it this evening because it's very much an unknown for us. Our bus contractor has notified us that they would no longer be continuing under their contract. We'll be issuing a response for proposal. That same bus contractor is able to bid again on his work. So while he's not willing to work for our current for our current contract doesn't mean that he won't submit a new one. And we know other districts, neighboring districts, have been forced down this path and have seen significant increases in how much that they have to pay for transportation. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jill. Thank you.
Good evening. Okay, so I'm going to run through our budget for 24-25, which obviously remains student-focused, fiscally responsible, and under the tax cap, and it is balanced. So part of our challenges, I guess, balancing the budget this year are, of course, living within our 2% tax cap, and in an economy that's well over, risen well over 5% over the last year. So while that remains true, our health insurance premiums are increasing 5%. Last year we saw an 8% increase. So they've increased less, but they're still increasing. I'd like to say that part of that is due to, let's say, 33% of the cost of those benefits are for post-employment benefits for retiree health costs. The district's made a lot of strides in changing that landscape in the bargaining unit contracts for the two major bargaining unit contracts so far are teaching and non-teaching staff. We're seeing contributions in retirement, which is going to help hopefully mitigate that retiree piece in the long run, over time. It's going to take time, though, to catch up. Bargaining unit contracts are addressing regional salary increases. So these are some of the changes you're going to see within the budget that I thought were significant. So I'm marking those. Our vendor contracts, as well as the cost of materials and supplies, are increasing across the board. Simple cost of doing business for labor, shipping, insurance requirements. Our vendors have to pay extra insurance sometimes to meet the requirements of our district's property liability insurance and whatnot. And so their prices are increasing for that reason as well. Our property insurance premiums for our own district facilities are increasing 16%. They've gone up over 36% in the last 2 years. Special education students are now aging out at 22 instead of 21. Not that we have a significant number that will be taking advantage of that, but it is something to note. Transportation home to school routes, overall estimated cost increases, we're looking possibly at 40%. As Dr. Luff mentioned, we are going out for a request for proposal for those services, being that our contractor does not want to renew the contract at the current rate. There are a lot of factors involved, but as far as that 40% goes, we're looking at what our costs too. Those include the Putnam Valley District route costs and also the contracted vendor routes. And again, it's just an estimate. We really don't know at this time. We're expecting the RFP results to not come back until May. So at that point, we will already have an adopted budget. We expect to adopt the budget April 11th. So, we're going to have to do our best guess estimates up until, we're able to determine what those might be. Small changes in revenue sources that are helping us to balance the budget. Of course, because we can, we're utilizing the 2% tax cap, will continue to force us to use some of our reserves as well. We're seeing increased interest earnings of about $500,000. I'm hoping that we'll see slightly more, but I'm not sure, so I had to stay kind of conservative on that figure. We never know what's going to happen in the last 6 months of the year. We can predict maybe through June at this point, but after that, we have no way of really predicting that. Additional tuitioning students from Garrison, we could bring in about $150,000 for that. Our increased foundation aid, we're only seeing about $120,000. I shouldn't be saying it too much too negatively about that, because there are many districts who are seeing decreases. So we are seeing a little bit of revenue there. Additional transportation aid. So the reason I'm mentioning this is it's because once our transportation is an expense-based aid, so what we spend on transportation will drive up the aid that we get for transportation, but it's only paying 60 cents on the dollar. So we're still going to be behind, but people will see that we may have a higher number for transportation aid, but yet it's because we have a higher cost as well. So I wanted to mention that. And we will be using reserves in the proposed budget. You'll see $399,000.
What are our current reserves at this point?
About 18% of our total budget, which is about $14 million.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, there's restricted reserves. Unrestricted reserves are at 4%, okay? And that's our limit. We're not
No, I
allowed to be
understand
above
that.
that.
Yeah.
So, well, there are many districts who do go above that, but we stay within the limits of what the law
Okay.
allows.
Thank you.
Okay, so here's a look at our revenues, what we're expecting. So our state aid, like I said, we're seeing an increase there. 16.5 million we're expecting. Our other local revenues, which includes that interest amount that I mentioned, 970,000. Our transfer in from our debt service fund will cover some of the cost of our debt, so that it can, we are in hopes of replacing the turf and track next summer of 2025. So in order to be able to transfer that money into the capital fund to incur those expenses for the track and field, we will use $1.3 million of our debt reserve to pay down our debt instead of using budgeted operating funds for that. School taxes, okay, our tax cap has come in at 2.59%. I've set 2.56 in the budget. It's just about $13,000 difference between the top of the cap and what we have it set at. Our fund balance reserves are at $399,000. That's what I just mentioned we were using for reserves. Total budget being $60.5 million, or a 4.15% increase over the prior year. So I want to go over the tax cap again. We did it we did it in December. We went over it in December when we talked about the 5-year outlook, and I think it's worth going through again. I think people, don't understand the tax cap and how it's calculated. It's like an 8-step formula, and we don't make up the formula. This formula is given to us by the state. So the prior year's tax levy is what we start out with. This is how we determine what our tax cap is, our allowable tax cap. So we start with the prior year's tax levy. We're allowed to factor in the allowable growth factor for us is 1.0052. It is different for every school district in the state. So that measures the quantity change in the amount of locally assessed taxable real property on our assessment rolls in comparison to the prior year. So for that, we get to add $209,560. Then we remove our capital debt expenses versus our building aid, which is also known as our local share of debt expense. So that's from last year, and that's 1.1 million. And then we get to factor in the assumed CPI. Now, we all know the CPI is much higher than 2%, but it's capped at 2%. We're only allowed to add 2% no matter what no matter how high it is. If it was lower, we would only be allowed to factor in the lower amount, but it's capped at 2%. So that gives us $786,930 to add to that number. And then we have our subtotal there. That's just where we are at this point in the calculation. And then our exclusions. So we have our new debt expense, which is, again, it's just the opposite of what you see in step 3. This will be our new debt expense versus our building aid for the upcoming year, which is $1.2 million. And then, because of our, so anytime any of our pension plan contributions, whether they're the teacher's retirement system or the employee's retirement system go above 2% of an increase from one year to the next, we are allowed to add the difference. And in this case, our employees' retirement system has gone up to 0.1%, so we're allowed to add 0.1%, which is $5,552. And then this is our tax cap that we've submitted to the state at 2.59. We've reported that we are allowed to raise $41.3 million. So that is how we arrive at the allowable cap. Okay. So where does all that money go? It goes to salaries, benefits, out-of-district tuitions, professional services, utilities, repairs and maintenance, transportation and equipment, and supplies. So everything that we purchase in the district, that's where all of our revenues go. Here's an outlook of all those expenses and how they're being proposed for the upcoming year. So we have our instructional services for general education. That includes, anything in our general education program, including the salaries and benefits for those. I'm sorry, not the benefits, only the salaries for that staff. So that's 30% of our budget. The special education area of instruction is 13% of our budget. Our instructional media and library automated services, 2.8% of our budget. Pupil services and athletics, 7% of our budget. Transportation is almost 7%. General support, that includes our district administrative offices, our legal costs, and insurance costs, 4.4% of our budget. Central services, that's operations and maintenance. It covers all facilities and maintenance for our entire district, all three buildings, 5%. Employee benefits, 22.91%. So between our, I'm going to say all salaries and benefits combined, it makes up about 70% of our total budget. Our debt service is our principal and interest payments. I mentioned earlier that we have to pay on our outstanding debt, and that's about 5% of our budget, 5.3% of our budget. Interfund transfers, that is the $1.3 million I mentioned we are putting in our budget to put aside for the track and field. It's not the entire amount that we need for the track and field. We'll be budgeting a similar amount next year in the budget. We split it between the 2 years. There's no reason to increase the level of the budget when we can do it over 2 years. The work will not be done until the summer of 2025 anyway. So that is 2.3% of the total budget. And again, the total budget being $60.5 million, or a 4.15% increase over last year. Our three-part,
Jill,
so
before you go on, could
Sure.
you just go back? So if I'm looking at the percentage of change in the budget,
yes,
so I know that the transportation, 15% change, but that's because of we're budgeting for a new contract?
It's only estimates. We anticipate that our costs will increase at least that much.
Okay.
We don't know. I mean, as we get closer to adopting the budget, our estimates could change. I don't really know that we'll have that like I said, we're not going to have that information until after we adopt the budget.
And the other fairly large one is the instructional media.
Right.
Why that large a
So
jump?
we budgeted for our library specialist at the middle school in the
Okay,
COVID
all right.
in the COVID-related funds,
Okay.
and now it's been moved into the budget, and we're also
Okay.
seeing big increases in technology expenses, and so forth. So it's a combination of things.
Okay.
And then there's salary increases and natural vendor
there's a
increases.
person in there. Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
throughout the entire. So that percent change in budget obviously is from this year to last year, and the percent of the total budget is your last column that you're
Right.
seeing on the right.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
And the state asked us to break that down into 3 categories: program, capital, and administration. So our program is 75% of our budget. Our capital expenses are about 14% of our budget, and administration is about 11% of our budget. And then I will turn it over to Dr. Luft.
So the purpose of this slide is to really focus on two of the factors that are really driving what that budget-to-budget increase is. As Jill had mentioned, 4.15%. But a significant portion of that is really being driven by these two items. And there's reasons why we would benefit long-term by spending money in our general fund to do these things. So as we had mentioned, replacement of the current track and field, as well as the fencing around it, is something that has been on our radar for many years. And we have two ways in which we can accomplish this work. We can go out to the public and bond that money, in which case we'd be paying interest on it over and over again. Or we can follow the same approval process, but use our existing general fund money and be able to get the work done sooner, which controls the escalation costs and construction costs, which continue to go up, and not incur any interest payments on that money. So that's $1.3 million. Transportation is something, again, outside of our control, but we knew we had to add more money to this budget to cover what we estimate our new transportation costs will be. So that's another $540,000. So these two items are increasing our budget by $1.84 million between the two of them. Without these two items, if we remove them from our budget, then our budget-to-budget increase would be 1%. So I'm going to continue to get that information out there. I don't want people to think that our actual expenditures are inflated up to 4%, because it's really, especially the capital expenditure, that money isn't even coming, that money's coming in from debt service, which is going to offset, free up money in order to do those projects. So I think it's just an important piece that without transportation and without the capital transfer, our budget to budget is really 1%. So, with a look, I'm like, oh, is this mine or yours? It speaks to, obviously, we've been talking a lot about the Facilities Planning Committee. We have an upcoming presentation where we're going to share the recommendations from the Facilities Planning Committee. And it's really just important. Our greatest assets are our buildings, and we have to continue to reevaluate what those needs are. So whether a building condition survey or the walkthroughs we did, we had a very engaged committee that participated throughout the process. And it's important that we maintain our greatest assets that this school district has. And we do our best to coincide it with expiring debt. So we're able to do new work without having any direct impact on the tax levy. Turn it back over.
So I'm not going to go through a lot of the wordy slides that you may have viewed throughout. I want them to be there because I want people who are not listening tonight and are not able to join us to be able to pull up these slides on our website and have a more extensive explanation as to what this all means, right? So we do want to maintain our facilities and our infrastructure, and we want to protect our property values, right? So how do we do that? Well, other than cutting things out of our budget, we have to decide what's the best way to do that. I can tell you, obviously, just like at your home, when you want to do a capital improvement or you want to save for something, that's the best way to do it. Because taking out a home equity loan is not going to save you any money. It's going to cost you more money in the long run. So what we have done in the past and what we need to do going forward is keep a capital reserve account. We've established a capital reserve. We did it in 2015, and it's going to be expiring in 2025, which is right around the corner. We're also on the cusp of another capital project, we know, in 27-28, because we're planning for that now. We have a planning facilities committee that's been meeting for the last 6 months at least, or maybe longer, lose track of time. And so when we get to that point, we don't want to have put on the brakes of saving our own money towards a capital project. In other words, we don't want to finance anything that we don't need to. So right now, because our capital reserve account is expiring, we want to talk about establishing a second capital reserve. So the first one we did was a maximum of $10 million over 10 years. We never reached the $10 million. We reached about $5 million. So by the end of this year, we will have reached about $5 million. We used about $600,000 of that in our project that we did last, because that's all we had at the time to use. Now we will continue to use it towards this next project coming up, and all of that money is money that we don't have to finance. So through thoughtful spending each year, we're not going to budget anything for this capital reserve. We're just going to take money that's remaining at the end of the school year and ask the board to transfer it into the capital reserve account. So moving forward, it would be called a Capital Reserve 2. This is establishing a new capital reserve, as I just explained. Again, it would be to reserve $10 million over 10 years if we ever got to that level. Obviously, a capital project with escalating costs and all of the things we just talked about, all of the inflation that we just talked about. By the time we do a project in 27, 28, we're trying to plan on what that cost escalation would be, what the interest rates would be. So we're trying to make good plans for that. And again, annual funding sources for that reserve could include year-end unexpended district budgetary appropriations, so everything that we're budgeting for now, so anything that's left over, and any unanticipated revenues that we receive between now and then could add to that reserve. So how do we do this? Well, there must be a voter-approved proposition establishing the reserve for a specific purpose or multiple purposes. And just backing up a little bit, you can see the second bullet there goes through all of the items that we could possibly use that capital reserve for. Unless the board designates the capital reserve to be for something specific, it can be for anything that's involved there. We have renovations, construction, reconstruction, improvements to the district's buildings, facilities, including original furnishings, equipment, machinery, so you name it, whatever's included in that capital project. The money can't be added to the reserve without board approval, and the money cannot be removed, this is very important, from the reserve without voter approval. So once the money goes into that reserve, it cannot be used for anything else but that. It can't be just redesignated to another type of reserve. It has to be voted out of the reserve in order to be used. And no money is added to the reserve unless there are remaining funds at the end of the school year, after we close our books, after we've accounted for all of the accounts expenses that are due and payable. And there is that maximum amount that I mentioned. We're looking to set that amount at $10 million over 10 years. I just think it's a random number, actually. It's not, if I say 5 million and we can't go over it, if we say, so, it's just easier to do it that way. And you can see, as we've operated, nobody's gone to the max with it. We haven't raised, appropriations just to get to that number. It's just a placeholder for this money. And that's how we have to do it.
Jill, it's
Yes.
unfortunate that the state does not allow a district to retain that capital reserve beyond, the 10 years. It's
So the
almost-
first one is retained. It's just kept at that
But
level.
you have to reintroduce it every 10 years.
It's just a law. I guess there's a lot of ways of looking at it. I try to kind of reason it myself in saying, well, why can't we just add to the old one? What's the difference? Why can't we just reestablish or ask the voters to renew? I think, the people that voted on that, it was 10 years ago. Many of those people don't live here. It's a new, I understand that looking at it that way might be, but I think it's what they're looking at. They're just trying to decide, does the community still want that?
The problem is the community doesn't.
It's probably
I
an
think
old
at
law.
times it's very confusing to them.
Yeah.
You have it now. At the end of 10 years, we have to do this again. Well, what are you doing? Are you getting more money? How does this work? That's why it needs to be explained so thoroughly,
Yeah.
so that people understand it's what we already have. We're simply renewing it and transferring those funds and have the ability to add more
Correct.
within that 10-year
Correct.
time.
That's why some of these slides may seem lengthy to you. I would encourage people to definitely reach out and ask questions about it. I'm always available for those conversations. It's a state law. It's something,
Yeah, I know.
it's a general municipal law that's been established, and it's never been changed. Maybe someday it will be.
Yeah, hopefully.
There's a lot of those. Okay, secondly, on the ballot, we're going to see a bus proposition number 2 as well. So last year, we established a bus proposition. We reestablished one that had run out. This is a little bit different because we're not putting money into it. This is just a placeholder for us to be able to borrow money should we have to replace buses or add additional buses. We've been talking about through this whole presentation that our contractor is no longer willing to work at the rates that were established in the contract. That's why we're going out for a new RFP. We are seeing that by currently utilizing in-district transportation, that we are seeing a savings based on that competitive contractor pricing. Therefore, retaining and replacing our fleet might be the way we want to go, and we won't be able to do that if we don't have a placeholder for this to be able to borrow money to purchase vehicles. So we would switch, in other words, from using our contractor to doing our own in-district transportation. We're not adding buses. There's about 40 buses in the entire, between the two, between our in-district buses and our out-of-district contracted buses. So we can't hire people if we don't have vehicles for them to drive. We aren't necessarily buying them, but we have to be prepared if that is the way things go. We don't have to use the money at all. This doesn't have a limitation in time, so it's really just permission from voters to say, if this is the way you need to go to make it less expensive for our community, then we need to have this authority to spend this money. So it reduces our reliance on our bus contractor rate increases due to what we are considering our driver shortages and also inflation, and increases the district's ability to maintain our own fleet. It provides flexibility to purchase vehicles when needed without large budgetary impacts. If I had to go out and buy a bus in the middle of a school year, and I've said this many times before, we would have to cut something else in order to do that. And that's not something we have built into our budget to normally do. Provides flexibility to keep home to school routes, field trips, and sport runs at a fiscally responsible level. So again, this will be another proposition on the ballot as well as the capital reserve. So at this point, we are going to see a budget proposition for 24-25 at $60.5 million. We'll see a second proposition to establish a second capital reserve. We'll see a proposition to allow financing for the district buses, and we'll be electing 2 board trustees. So at this point in the presentation, there's a few more slides, not too many more. Does anybody have any questions about what I've already spoken about? Expenses, revenues, anything?
The proposed tax increase on the average taxpayer then would be approximately, from what I understand, what you presented, about 2.56
Yes.
increase.
Yes.
And again, inflation is right now at the last PCE, which is the consumer pricing that the Federal Reserve looks at, over 3%. So that we're under inflation, well under inflation at that amount, and I think that's excellent. The burden, is certainly much less than what regular inflation is.
Right,
on
and
our
average that in
residents.
with last year's non-allowable increase in the CPI, only allowed to the cap, and, it's well over 5, so it's accumulating,
Right,
those
right.
things.
So I think that's very good.
And again, we talked about the biggest part of the budget being that $1.84 million that's going towards the transportation expenses and the capital expenses. And the capital expense that we're increasing the budget by is really already in our reserves. It's
there.
already taxpayer dollars that have
Yeah.
been paid, so the actual budget to budget would be around 1%.
Exactly. It's excellent.
I think that is tremendous, and I
It
think
is.
that if people can understand the grandiose way that transportation is increasing their costs in the next coming years for all districts, it's not just us, it's everybody. The fact that we are marginally at that 1% without transportation is really amazing. And I think that we have to understand that this is something that's just happening. And if the vast majority of the increase is due to something that is out of our control, we have to do the very best that we can with the other portions of the budget, right? And I think that that's what has been done here, to keep our programs alive, to make sure that our students have what they need, to make sure that class sizes are appropriate, to make sure that teachers have what they need as far as training, to bring in a behavioral specialist to cut costs in that way from paying, BOCES. I think that those are all very fiscally responsible things that we've seen in all of the budget presentations, about how we can save a little here and a little there to really offset this big transportation cost that we can't even control. So I think that for the public, that's really important that they understand those two pieces about the capital reserve and the transportation.
Right. And make no mistake, we are using $400,000 of our reserves, which is the taxpayer money already paid, to put towards that. And I think that says a lot as well, that, we are not looking to raise anything above where we need to, but we need to keep a good balance because we need to make sure that we maintain enough reserves to be safe. We don't know what other surprises are going to come along. Okay. So I do have to talk about contingent budget, which will lead to the next couple of slides. And I'm going to go into contingent budget, I think, more in the next couple of meetings, because as we get closer to the actual vote, I think this becomes more of a topic of conversation. So what I highlighted there is really what I want to stress tonight, and that is what happens if a school budget is not approved, and emphasize the fact that the Board of Education must adopt a budget. If it's not approved, they must adopt twice, because they do have a chance to put it back up again. But if it gets disapproved for any reason, the Board of Education must adopt a budget that levies a tax no greater than that of the prior year. So what does that mean for Putnam Valley? A proposed reduction of a little over $1 million, $1,030,762. The budget would be subject to contingent budget requirements as well. This means reducing the proposed budget by over $1 million, which in turn would reduce staff as well as diminish programs and program offerings by forcing the district to make cuts and ultimately hurting students and future opportunities for students. And I think that's the emphasis on why we don't want to see a contingent budget. Okay, and
Jill, I'm sorry, I know you said you're going to go over this more in detail, but I know it was brought up last year that this has to be mentioned, what the impact of the contingency budget would be. So that's why you put it into your presentations. That's why you speak on it multiple times, because it must be
absolutely,
stated in public what would occur if we did not
I think
pass.
Just the impact of losing that money in the budget. It's not the taking away of the money we're transferring in of the reserves to help pay for the field that's going to reduce it. That's not going to reduce what we need to reduce.
Right. It's not a scare factor. You have to state this.
Right. And this leads into a conversation about our voter approval rate and compared to the rest of the state. And Dr. Left is going to talk to you about that.
So this is going to begin my public plea to get individuals out to vote. This slide represents the percentage of votes or passing budgets by what percent. So the statewide, all schools, 74% approval. So in Mid-Hudson, it's 73%. and downstate small schools 74%, right? So Putnam Valley has a tradition of having much closer ballots. You'll see that Putnam Valley is 54.4%. The scary part is that's 4.5% away from failing. And we have our voter turnout, while not overly impressive, is actually better than many districts in the region. But these slides highlight some of the information that we have, and it's really just to raise awareness. If you look at the two slides on the left, these are voters aged 55 to 74 and voters aged 75 and older. So they represent well over 50% of all votes cast are cast by community members over the age of 55. The typical parent group, parent aged group, 30 to 54, right? Obviously, there's some that fall outside of that, but in general, that's the group you would consider the age to have parents in school, most likely to have students in school, is only 37% of our vote. And then 6% are individuals aged 18 to 29. So while I'm very appreciative of the senior citizens that come out and vote in our school budget, we really owe them a compliment because they're the ones who are passing our budgets, right? So senior citizens represent more than 50% of our vote. A lot of them are coming out and they're voting to support our budget, so that's greatly appreciated. But I would love to see that 30 to 54 age group increase. The next slide shows parents who voted versus parents who do not vote. So only 25% of our parents come out and vote on our school budget, which means 75% of parents do not vote on our school budget, which, as we know what a contingency budget would do, could drastically impact not only their child's education, but their home values and other things that would go along with a failing school district. If you look at all registered voters, 18.9% of voters registered to vote in Putnam Valley come out and vote on the school budget, which means 81% of registered voters do not cast a ballot each May. So it's that 18.9% that's making this decision, which again could so adversely impact our students. And when you look at all votes cast, parents represent 30% of the votes that were cast last school year, which means 70% of the votes cast were from not parents, from other individuals in our community. So I think this information is very telling. I think obviously the tax cap has created a sense of complacency. Things are going well, there's no real controversy, people aren't paying a lot of attention. But if you go back 2 slides, 54.4% is pretty close.
Yeah, that is.
And we really need more people, especially our parents, to come out and vote. They could vote, be informed and vote any way they wish, right? We obviously don't know how people are voting, but we certainly know what the numbers are, and we're in desperate need to get more engagement from our community when it's so much is at stake. So some of the ways in which we hope to do that, we're going to hold our informal budget talks again. So we have some dates where they've already been scheduled. Once we get through this presentation, this is sort of the first time we're doing the full budget. So Jill will make herself available. Sometimes I'll sneak in. And really, just an opportunity for anyone who's got a question. You want to go line by line through the budget? We'll do that. You have a question about how something works? We'll do that. You have a concern? We'll certainly sit there and entertain it. Right? These are really informal settings, an opportunity for anyone to come and be empowered with information, factual information. It's inevitable. There'll be incorrect information that'll be posted on social media, and we encourage anyone who has a question or wants factual information to contact the school, and we will always make ourselves available to get you that information. And just a quick reminder, so the budget vote is scheduled for May 21st. Polls are open from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. at the Putnam Valley Elementary School. Anybody who needs an absentee ballot or register to vote, you can contact Maureen Bellino, our district clerk, and her contact information is there. And as I mentioned before, Jill is always available to answer any budget-related questions. And at the end of the day, it takes a community to support our schools. So we wanted to include some pictures of some of the amazing things that happen in our schools. Any other questions?
We had discussed 2 large classes, one at the elementary, one at the middle school. How was that resolved?
So those positions are in the budget. One was filled, we had a leave replacement who's been here for the entire year. So actually just tonight, we're gonna make her a probationary appointment. So that is one of the 2 sections.
Okay.
The other one, we're sort of waiting and seeing what happens with kindergarten. Our kindergarten numbers are very low. We're projecting maybe 85 students. So we could end up having an extra elementary school teacher at the elementary
flip
school,
up there.
in which case we would just slide them into 4th grade and be able to carry 6 sections in 4th grade as well.
So fingers crossed, those big classes will be covered with the appropriate size.
They will be, which I don't want to hire someone and then have an extra teacher.
Right, no, I understand.
But we have the money in the budget if necessary, right? If our kindergarten numbers shoot up, we end up with 100 kindergarten students, we'll then post and hire another teacher for the 4th grade.
Okay,
It will be addressed. We're just not sure how to address it yet.
Okay, good.
That's great.
I'm happy to hear that. And secondly, Dr. Luft, we talked about Spanish being introduced at an early level. We do Mandarin right now, and I'm wondering what we can do to remedy that situation. I think that's so important, and I stress it every year. Spanish is the second language of these United States, and the ability for our children, or even our adults, to communicate with each other using both languages would just be the most ideal situation we could ever have. Is there a possibility of introducing Spanish, even if it's just the cultural aspects, as we do at Mandarin, at the lower levels? I think that's so key. I really do.
Yeah, I mean, it was certainly a goal of ours for this school year. We had every reason to expect that it was going to happen, and we were unable to make that work with our partnership with BOCES. So it's something that I agree with you. All right, it's something that we have to continue to work on, and if BOCES, and they're still trying to fill this position, if they're unable to do it, then we can explore other ways in which we can provide students with that same level of exposure. Like I don't think we're going to have foreign language in elementary school class all of a sudden start.
No, I understand that.
But in terms of providing students with
introduction.
exposure to the Spanish language, just like we do Mandarin,
Yes.
and provide students that opportunity, we'll do everything in our power to make that happen.
I think that's so important. I really do. Thank you.
And I think
go ahead.
just along with that is, I think a goal of ours should be to look at our language programs that we offer. So beginning maybe in the fall, start looking at that, because I think there are some opportunities and some looking at class sizes and what's available. So that's something that, as a board, I think we should take on. So.
Absolutely. Yeah, conversations have already started.
Yeah.
Regarding sort of sustainability of the programs we have. Are they the right programs? Should we look at other ones? So those conversations are ongoing.
Yeah.
Great.
Good.
So I'm not sure what we can do about this, but the numbers of voters is something that we need to really explain to our community. Because I would venture to say that there is probably a very high correlation that the highest percent of voters do not have students in the school, and we also have a very low passage rate on our budget. And so those two pieces, it would make sense. I'm not sure, but it would make sense that they would go together. If we had more parents voting, they would most likely vote for the budget as opposed to it. And my question is, have we figured out a way to do a barrier assessment as to why people are not coming out to vote? I'm sure that we can make assumptions, and I'm sure that we can read articles and do research about what's happening in other communities and around the country, but that is a very large number of parents that are not coming out to vote. And truthfully, it's reflected in other areas of our community as well. It's reflected in some of the parent involvement, things that we do here. We do have lots of parent involvement when kids are involved in particular activities, but then when they're not, there seems to just not be enough time for parents to come out. I am wondering if perhaps the information of what a contingency budget actually is. How do we get that to those families so that they truly understand the importance of just coming out, whether you vote for it or not? Just come out and speak your voice, right? So my second question to that is there a barrier assessment that we can figure out what are the barriers there? And then what can we do as a board, if anything? I will take the last 3 minutes that I have available out of every day to be able to help people understand the importance of their vote, that this is not, the vote doesn't just matter in a presidential election. It matters especially to the people who have children in the district right now. So I'm not sure what else we can do.
Yeah, I think my first hope is to raise awareness. I think everybody thinks everybody else votes. So when you look at those numbers, it's pretty stark. It's very surprising. So I think the first piece is raising awareness, and then the second is educating them, right? Mm-hmm. What happens if, right? We're so close at 54%. What happens if a budget's defeated? What happens to your home values? What happens to staffing at schools? What happens to programs? There's a lot at stake. And I was just at the NISCUS, New York State Council of School Superintendents conference in Albany, and there was a lot of advocacy stuff going on. And I raised the question. I said, why is the school budget the only budget that the community votes on? Right? If we're below the tax levy cap, why? Like, you don't vote on the town budget, you don't vote on... So it doesn't really make a lot of sense, but at the same time, 95% of them pass across New York State. And to make it worse, it actually cost us tens of thousands of dollars to run an election. But many of those pass, as you saw the other slide, 70, 80% passing rate.
Right.
Putnam Valley is very unique in terms of our passing rate is so close. Right. And would be so detrimental for the school to have a defeated budget. The impact drags on for many, many years afterwards. Even if your next 10 pass, you're still living with the repercussions of a defeated budget and the money that was lost that could no longer be used to support kids. So there's a lot at stake, and I don't think people realize that. And we're really close, and I don't think people realize that either. So
right.
I think awareness and education are really our first two. And we're looking to partner. I'm hoping the PTA will partner with us and help get the word out, the PTSA, anybody in our community that's willing to speak to others and understand how much is at stake here.
What frustrates me the most is that with a budget that's so clean and so tight and provides, great things for our kids, below inflation, well below inflation, how anybody could sit back and not support that, it baffles the heck out of me, because this is a great budget, and thanks to Jill and all the individuals who worked on it, to you, Dr. Luft, and certainly the mindset of our staff and administrators who understand that the school is basically supported by the community residents. And this is not a bad budget. I mean, I just listened to Carmel's presentation. Mm-hmm. They had an individual come, go down and break their budget apart, and they're facing a disaster. They're facing a real fiscal disaster. We are not there. We are in good shape, and we need the people to understand that, come out and continue that sense of wellness for years to come by voting yes on the budget. This is a great budget. Can't stress that enough. And everybody I see, I tell them the same thing. This is a budget you want to go out and vote for. You've got to.
Well, and I will say, I loved Crystal's line about barriers. I don't know. When I first started teaching in Putnam Valley, I thought, well, it's just that people don't know about the budget and how important it is. So I decided that I used to write weekly notices to my parents, and I had really good communication with parents, and it was going to be different in my class, because starting at the beginning of the year, I was going to talk about how great the school was and how important it was to vote and participate. These were students, I had their students in my class every day, and I couldn't get over 10% of my parents to vote.
Wow.
So I don't know what stops people. I wish I did, because then
you could do something
about it.
Right.
I mean, it was just really frustrating.
Right.
I don't know.
Well,
To your point, Sam, I think and I'm proud to say it, there's not a lot of controversy here. And I think that brings people out, and I'm proud to say that we don't have that controversy,
Oh,
but
I
I
could
think
cause
that's
some.
part of the issue. Part of the issue, right? No, but it really is, and it causes complacency, and it causes, you know, people to think that everything's okay, and that pretty soon it won't be if they don't start paying attention.
Exactly. The controversy is if you don't support the budget and we have to do a contingent budget, we are in the hole. We are talking $1 million worth of cuts that are regulated by the state of New York. They will tell us where to cut. You can't cut here, but you can cut there. And we will lose our arts. We will lose our sports. And this is not a threat to the public. This is real. We don't control this. The state controls it and tells us what we can cut and what we can't. And $1 million you don't make up the following year. You can't raise the budget $1 million to make up for what you lost and then on top of that increase the budget again.
No, because you would go above your tax cap. So what you're doing is you're compounding
Exactly.
the problem. So,
Exactly.
The first year we lose $1 million. The second year we lose $2 million, and
Yeah.
the following we lose $4 million.
Yeah.
And it keeps going until, you know, it can strip the budget of its value entirely, and it takes a long time to come back from something like
Well,
that.
you destroy a school district that way. That's what you do.
I think too, like, the real controversy is that 46% of the people who voted no. Who is pointing that out? Like, and I think people need to hear that, again, because to Dr. Love's point, I think people just think that it's automatically going to pass
Yeah.
because Putnam Valley is wonderful and Putnam Valley is a small hometown and we have 3 beautiful schools that offer wonderful things to our kids and that it's always going to be that way. And if there's anything that we could clarify, it's that number of 54% on the opposite side of that are 46% of people who voted no. And I think that people need to really think about that. Their voice matters. And just as an educator in general, I would want the children in this community to see their parents vote. I think that's very important for someone who didn't always have a right to vote, you know?
But here's the thing. Have we ever had a contingency budget here?
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
When?
I lived through that.
Just remind me when.
Years ago.
How
long time ago.
A long time
Oh,
ago.
yeah, a long time. Back
And I
in the
think,
80s.
I think that's a problem. If you have not lived, and I've worked through a contingency
Yeah.
budget
Awful.
in another district a few times, it destroys what we can do for children.
Yeah, programs.
Let
Not only
alone the wealth of your community,
Exactly.
your house.
Yep.
How in your right mind can you hurt a child?
Yeah. And it's
Go
not
out
only
and
the
vote.
school and the educational process, it's your home values, it's
Yep.
your community values, as you said, Helen. Everything gets slaughtered by that. The value of our homes increased tenfold when the high school was voted in. It really did. It was an amazing thing. From, homes at 180 to 200,000, they're now to $700,000 for a raised ranch in this town. Why? Because we have an excellent school district. And to sustain that, the money that is required to run the district has to be there. We have to vote. And it's not even touching inflation. That's the great thing. We're
It's not
below
even at
that.
the tax cap.
I
Yeah.
think one of the things that when I talk to parents, what I hear all the time about, getting back out of the house, right? We have families that have 2 parents working in general or a single parent. It's really hard to go home after a full day of work, cook dinner, feed the kids, get homework done, all of those things, and then get back out of the house. And how do we make it more accessible for working parents who are, do we do more activities that they can bring their children out that night? Do we make it more accessible in the morning? I know that we're restricted in our hours, but I think we do as much as we can, but I think we have to acknowledge getting back out is really hard, and everything we do, every activity we put out has to have a child function, in my opinion, attached to it, because how else? Then you have to leave your kids. You've left your kids as a parent all day, maybe in daycare for a lot of parents, and then come home, cook dinner, and get back out. That's really hard to do as a parent. So I think starting to change that mindset and how we do things, which we try, certainly we try that, but that should be our goal, our focus. How do we do that? How do we make it easier for parents to get here?
Yeah.
Maureen, is
districts-
absentee ballots are only if you're out of the district during voting hours?
It's now it's early voting, anybody can.
So,
So
early
we
voting.
should
We
should really be
push that and
promoting that.
help people understand that piece. And I would say you're brilliant, because I know school districts that purposefully hold concerts and events the night of the vote and remind parents to go and vote. Don't tell them how to vote, obviously, but just to vote, and do it in the same location as the vote. And so I think that that's like another key thing, just to get parents out, because again, the simple fact of I'm already out of the house, and listen, I have 3 kids, a lot of different ages, and I'm home alone at night. So that really, it resonates with me, and I'm sure that it does with many of the other parents that live in Putnam Valley.
And early
Our
voting.
polling hours are actually 6 a.m.,
To
to
9.
9 p.m. and
Right.
purposely kept that way to make availability. We are longer than most, and, I think we have that accessibility, but, I understand what you're saying, they're working or they're doing.
Right.
But, to make that extra effort and not be lazy about doing it, and I hate to say it, but it almost comes down
Well-
to making that effort to get back out and do it. I was a parent too,
Yeah,
you know.
I do,
so-
I want to be cautious about the word lazy, because there are some people that are in our district that probably really can't get there. And, we don't want to, what we should do is be able to educate them that they have another option, right? Instead of actually going to the polls on that day.
Absentee ballots or early voting.
We have that.
Well, we don't have, absentee ballots would be the early voting, because we don't have early voting hours.
We have early voting.
Only
have
via
only
absentee.
absentee ballots.
We do, right?
Absentee.
We do.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, yeah.
Absentee.
Now we do.
Early voting, totally different.
They could go to a,
Same as an absentee ballot, you don't have to have any reason.
correct,
Right.
but
It's
there's
not-
there's not a polling booth they're going to go to like general elections have.
No.
That's what I mean. So it's just absentee ballots.
Right.
But anybody can drop it off.
Yeah.
Is there a window for that?
Yes, it's going to be all on the website. There's a window where I'm not allowed to send out information prior to a certain date. So we're not going to put the information on about the applications until that date when I can send.
Yeah,
Okay,
They can pick them up.
okay.
okay,
okay,
good,
Thank you very much.
thank you.
thank you.
Sorry.
Okay. New business. We're going to start with number 1. Crystal,
Okay.
you want to start, or Sam, you want to start
Yeah,
again?
that's fine. Resolved on the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to appoint Maria Goldrick to a probationary appointment, a bus driver, that is 5.5 hours per day, effective March 4th, 2024, with a probationary period of 52 weeks, March 3rd, 2025, at the Transportation Department on Step 9 of the CSEA salary schedule.
Second.
Questions or comments? Congratulations, Dr. Luft, on another bus driver.
We're out of buses, though.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? The resolution passes. Number 2, please.
Resolved on the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to appoint Elaine Rendazzo to a probationary appointment for office assistant, school calendar, effective March 4th, 2024, with a probationary appointment of 52 weeks, March 3rd, 2025, at the high school on step 3 of the CSEA salary schedule.
Second.
Questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? The resolution passes. Number 3, please.
Resolved on the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to accept the resignation of elementary school monitor Joanne Nyborg from the district effective the close of business on February 29th, 2024, as per document 132/24, attached to the agenda and official minutes of this meeting.
Second.
Questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? The resolution passes. Number 5, please.
Resolved on the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to appoint Gianna Mafia to a 4-year probationary term as a math teacher commencing on September 1st, 2024, and terminating on August 31st, 2028, in the 10-year area of math in the middle school On step 2, masters of the PVFT salary schedule. Ms. Mafia, and I'm pronouncing her name wrong, I'm sure I am, so I apologize, holds initial certification in math, 7 through 12, and students with disabilities. In order to be eligible for appointment to tenure, said employee must receive at least 3 APPR ratings of effective or highly effective during the 4-year probationary term and may not receive an ineffective rating at the final year of
Second.
probation.
Second.
Questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? The resolution passes. Number 6, please.
Resolved on the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to amend the appointment of Shannon Ginley, approved at the business meeting of August 22nd, 2023 as follows. Resolved on the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to appoint Shannon Ginley to a 4-year probationary term as an elementary education teacher in the 10-year area of elementary at the middle school effective September 1st, 2023, and terminating on August 31st, 2027. Ms. Ginley holds students with disabilities 1 through 6, childhood ed 1 through 6, literacy B through 6, and B2 initial certifications. In order to be eligible for appointment to tenure, said employee must receive at least 3 APPR ratings or of effective or highly effective during the 4-year probationary term and may not secure an effective rating in the final year of probation.
Second.
Questions or comments?
No.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? The resolution passes. Okay, public comments on any topic.
Evening all. Joe Ferraro, resident of Putnam Valley. I have a bunch of things on my list, but first I want to thank the district, staff, faculty, and the families, as well as we are approaching a dubious anniversary of the last week of normalcy in our lives from 4 years ago. So I want to thank the district for everything that it had done to break through to the other side and come out even stronger than going into it. So I want to thank all faculty and staff that helped that, as well as obviously families and all the sacrifices that need to be made to do that. But Jeremy and the board, I appreciate all that was done with that. On some budget stuff, some just either observations or questions, which you don't have to answer now, obviously. It's disappointing that Orange County is not going to re-up. Seeing as I think the district played a really strong role in actually keeping that company alive by going, it was a question if we should go with them because we didn't know how well they were going to be solvent, if we, that we thought we might be the straw that brought the camel's back to break them. So I'm disappointed that that's the case. Hopefully they might reconsider, but either way, if you're going out for bids, I am concerned that you won't have your bids before you adopt the budget. I know we've got contingencies built into it, and because it's 60% or whatever aidable, I think, while it's an impact, it's not the hugest impact that it sounds like it could be huge, but it's, it seems like it's only 4 to 6 weeks away from now that you would adopt the budget, so it seems that there might be an opportunity to accelerate that schedule. I don't know the specifics, and I don't need to. It feels like you should have that information before you adopt a budget. I think the district needs to continue to carefully look at the lower enrollment. I saw the number was less than 500 in the elementary school, and those staffing levels, which in conjunction with the COVID money that when we brought those positions on, with the understanding that only if they were really necessary that they would stay on, but the idea that we would cut them as they came through. So I want to make sure that as we go through the budgeting process, we keep looking at that. Sam, I also watched the Marathon Carmel School District board meeting.
Yeah.
But it did show the impact of a contingent budget.
Yes, it did.
They went with a contingent budget, I think it was 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago. And because they didn't feel they had the support of their community, they put up far smaller increases than their cap would allow them. So that just exacerbated the issue.
Compounded it.
So they kept going further and further down into negative territory where you could never recover those dollars. From kind of the taxpayer advocate side, they would say, yeah, that's fine. I say that that's not fine for a school district and for a community, because now they are something along the lines of a $6 million hole they need to dig themselves out of. And they're even talking about eliminating kindergarten.
Right.
Even though I don't think that'll ever happen, but they're talking about eliminating kindergarten, which I think they say they'd save $1.7 million, and that's still not even a third of what they need to save.
Right.
So it's really important that taxpayers and voters get out there, community members get out there and vote. You can't say vote yes. I can say they should vote yes on the budget. On the turnout for the 50 some odd percent, 54% that said yes, I do think that the library being on the ballot probably had a negative impact on the school budget. And this is speaking who's now the current president of the library board. I think that the library vote had a negative impact on the school budget. So that would be, I think that gives maybe a little bit more breathing room. We talk about controversy. I think if we do vote or have a conversation about a cell tower on the campus, that would bring people out, because I know that was something that was happening. Additionally, Jeremy, you called 55-year-old senior citizens, which I have a real problem with.
Come on, Joe.
He did. I was like, did he really just say that half the voters are senior citizens? Like, no, it's not true. But okay, I know AARP thinks I am, but I'm not. And that's it. I want to thank you for the opportunity, and good luck.
Thanks, Joe.
Thank you, Joe.
All right. I guess I'll start by saying my name is Michael Kumis. I'm a member of the community. I have kids in the school, and I'm also one of the local scoutmasters for one of the Boy Scout troops. I was going to ask a question first, but I think my comment would bring up, well, why don't people come out to vote? I think it has to do with civic duty. I think teaching our kids civic duty would be a huge, I don't know if that's done in the schools. I'm actually not sure. Teaching them civic duty and maybe making them come to a school board meeting like this and bringing their parents as part of the program might be a way for us to get more parents in here to see this. I don't think people, it's online being streamed, but nobody's watching this right now. Very few people are, and the people that are, the people that want to dissent. The reason why people vote no, my belief, is because it's the only tax they can vote against.
Yeah.
Right? So
Yeah.
you have to realize it's the only way for them to vent. Even if they don't have any problem with the school, that's why. So I think teaching civic duty, which is why I'm here with my son, is in Boy Scouts we teach this. And one of the requirements in many of the badges that we get, as well as rank advancements, is teaching the kids that they need to get involved in the community, and they need to come to these meetings, and they need to vote. And I think maybe if we can incorporate that in the schools more, and then that's our way in to bringing that up. So that's my opinion on that. I did have a question. I don't know if you're able to answer a question that I have about the reserve money. Is that invested?
Yes.
It is. What type of investment is it put into?
So we only we have limited
Right.
places, avenues to go to invest money, and we have currently invested it in a place where we feel that we're getting the best interest and best return. We do work with fiscal advisors to help us make those decisions, so it's not just solely based on what I think is okay or what the superintendent thinks is okay.
Are they like treasuries or something
They
that,
can
that
be.
has,
There are
that can't go down?
Specific, yeah, there's specific collateralized investments that
Okay.
the state allows. But yeah, there's only, there's very few places we can do it to keep it safe.
I was just curious.
yeah,
Because that's an avenue to, obviously, is the big chunk of money you could.
And
if
it
you
all
could- if you
depends.
could
Different
invest
times
it.
of the year, we have different amounts of revenue to be able to invest, right? So
Right.
we collect the bulk of our revenue between September and December, and then, of course, it starts to, to flow the other way. So we collect our taxes, during September and October, and then, but yeah, we keep good track of that. We have to, and the state controller comes down and checks that out too. So, but we are always looking for other ways. There are several firms out there, not too many of them, but the fiscal advisors are pretty connected with the state to let us know what we should be doing too. So.
All right, thank you very much.
You're
That's
welcome.
it. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you.
I was students, do you feel like civics is something that was covered in school, like that somewhere between kindergarten and 12th grade, that you got a sense of, I don't know, what it means to be an American or be a citizen or?
So yes and no. I don't think there's ever like a specific lesson or course or anything that ties specifically to civic duty and being like an American, as you said, or being a citizen. But I know that in I can speak on my perspective from the IB diploma and a lot of IB courses. One of the main things is how to be a global citizen, and in that there is a component of civic duty, and that comes up a lot in specifically our TOK class. But there's not so much an emphasis in every single course. I can think of like specific moments where it's brought up, where it's talked about, but not necessarily like an entire unit on like civic duty or this or this. There are various incentives, though. I think that's like in honor societies when community service is brought up, the conversation of that's how that conversation kind of enters into a lot of other students' minds of how to like benefit the community and with like service in that area. But I don't think there are many ways in which it's touched upon other than those.
I think that it's very important to be educated and understand what's going on in the school board and in the districts. Like, I feel like even at this position, like, I know so many more things that I would not otherwise know. And I think this position, like, it's a lot of responsibility, but, like, also anyone can come to the meetings, and a lot of people aren't watching, I don't know. But I think it's very important to, like, be aware of what's going on as a student also. Like, it's not just our parents' responsibility or interest. Like, I love to learn about what's going on at the elementary school and what the money is being used for and what improvements you guys are making. And I advise, like, students to do that as well. Like, I don't see students here, but I think that it's really important to take that initiative and become educated on what's going on.
So if they don't come to meetings, and your lives are busy, I'm amazed that you two can make as many meetings as you do. Is there a way of reaching out? I don't know, we've tried so many different ways of communicating. We've tried newsletters, we've tried, we have open forums. If you blast out stuff, people just get annoyed, if you just send emails or whatever. But yeah, we'd like more people to know what was going on or, be interested in coming to a board meeting, but I don't know how to get them here. There's usually just a few, so.
I would just like to share there is a participation in government course that I don't believe all students engage in, but there is a course offered. I want to, I think, credit Bill Scampoli for making sure students know about registering for voting and becoming registered voters. And I also, part of the participation in government course is the Seal of Civic Readiness. We're one of the, not all schools do this, we're one of the few schools that did originally sign up to be able to provide this Seal of Civic Readiness on diplomas. So students engage in an active civic duty in the community, they do research, they put together a project. So there are different ways that we address civic duty, especially at the high school level, but it is woven throughout the curriculum about your responsibility as a citizen of the country and just voting in general. So I just want to make sure that that's put out there.
Yeah,
Thanks.
of the 5 social studies standards, Standard 5 is civics, citizenship, and government. So that's really woven into the social studies curriculum throughout the grades.
I just want to add, this is something that I just, like my siblings, I don't even think they did this, but last year, like as a grade, as a school, I know you have to be a certain age, but we all registered to vote, which I love that we had that opportunity because it was done in school, and of course it's taught in history. Like you learn about, like, obviously the creation of the United States and voting in general. It's taught in history classes.
So I've heard New York doesn't do it, but I know other states in the United States have allowed 16-year-olds to vote in school board elections because they are directly involved. They're in the school, they know what's going on or whatever. So every time I hear a report on that, I think, geez, that would be really great if New York could do that, because I think 16-year-olds do know kind of like what's going on. They know who's working for them, who's trying to make the school a better place or whatever, and they have a voice. It would, and then you get them early enough, and they get involved early enough, hopefully that would transfer to state and local elections also, not just school boards when they get to be 18. But New York is not there yet, so. Darn.
I wonder how many of your friends will be voting for the school budget, period, whether or not they vote yes, but are they
Just to
aware?
vote.
Like, will they go?
I will say, I got 3 people to watch one Board of Education meeting. So, and I signed some autographs
good,
with them.
John.
So yeah. So it's
double
getting
it
out
now.
there.
Go to
So
6.
slowly but surely, it is getting out there.
Give them a discount on their prom tickets if they vote. I mean, there are places like Australia that you get either a bonus on your taxes. You actually get paid for voting
that day.
or a reward of some
Yeah.
kind because you are participating.
They should give everybody off on election day and on school board voting day. So they can vote.
Okay.
Also to say Ryan O'Dell also pushes his students to register to vote and try to
Good,
get into
good.
voting polls. He
That's
also
excellent.
gets voting, so he also tries very hard.
Yeah,
Excellent.
Ryan.
Excellent. Okay, upcoming meeting topics.
So is the budget season. You'll see this presentation at least twice more in the next couple weeks.
Okay.
Good.
We're gonna try to spice it up a little bit. I said, Jill, maybe she could do my slides and I'll do her slides. We'll figure it out. We're gonna let Reese and Charlie do it themselves for the 3rd time.
There you go.
That's a good idea.
That's it. And we are gonna schedule a presentation of the Facilities Planning Committee recommendations to the board as well. So
Okay,
we'll squeeze that in.
okay. And all the prior meetings on the academic presentations and the sports presentations, they're all on the website, right? So people can look for those. Okay, board member.
And I'm sorry, I didn't mean
That's
to
okay.
interrupt you.
No.
So what we showed tonight was really a summary of the expenditures and the proposed expenditures and revenues in the upcoming budget. There is a line-by-line budget. It's about a 1,500-line, spreadsheet, and you can see it in its entirety on the website starting tomorrow. So that will be posted, and I encourage people to take a look at it. And again, ask questions, because now's the time.
Thank you. Board member comments.
Just very quick. This evening, there was a great thing going on upstairs above us while our meeting was on, and that was a presentation of superior science students and their posters and the work that they've done, just outstanding stuff. I was able to get up there prior to our executive session, look at the posters, but I couldn't speak to any of the presenters because they were still gathering their own thoughts and, talking to each other. Also, tomorrow night, we have a great thing going on at the elementary school science, and then here we have the Tri-M Honor Society. Is there a way we can better coordinate the calendar? I know I brought this up last year, Dr. Luff, and I know every board member here loves to go and see these terrific things that our students do. And that's why we ran for the board. We just love the process of education, and not being able to see things because of conflicts is really tough.
I wish I had an answer. I mean, I feel like we talk about this all the time, and I'm sure we've gotten better, but yet these
We've gotten better. We have much, but still those conflicts occur, and I think they can be remedied if it's laid out, prior to the start of the next year. This is when Tri-M is going to be. This is when our board meetings are.
Well, our board meetings are the first things that are published.
Yeah.
So that information is available.
It's there all the time.
Yeah,
Right.
at least a year in advance, so that's
Work around that.
That's not an issue.
But it's looking at others' calendars. It's looking at, if you're a
right.
high school person, looking at
Look
the
at the
elementary
elementary
calendar. If you're a
and
middle
middle
school
school.
person,
Yeah.
look at
And
the high school.
I mean, the piece that I would add to that is that, yes, it's hard for us to get to two different things that are happening at the same time. But imagine a parent
A
that
parent.
has two kids involved in those two
You got
things.
it.
And now I have to choose which one I go to or which one my significant other goes to. That piece is challenging.
Yes.
And I mean, every district faces that problem. When you have a lot of wonderful things happening, conflict is going to happen.
And it's great that they happen.
But perhaps if there's an event that's not published on the calendar at the beginning of the year, that it's just really looked at before the conflict, happens, if possible.
And sometimes snow
Right.
and other things put off.
Right.
You have to change something for, and
Yeah, I know.
there's a
Things
conflict. I know.
like that, I understand, the conflict, but most of the time, I think it can be worked around. It's just that there's so many, like you said, so many great things
Right.
happening. You want
I know.
to see what's
I know.
going on.
But to that point, I will say that this year, with the efforts of Dr. Luft and the administrative team, we have gotten at least notice
Yes.
of all the stuff that's happening.
Which is
Which is
great.
great. Which
And
is great. Maureen
yes.
sends it to us. We get it through a couple of different, sometimes we get direct invitations, which is really nice. But, that's been a tremendous plus this year over prior years, so.
Well, the one good thing about tomorrow is that the elementary is allowing us.
To go
the
early.
Board members to go early at 6 o'clock. So I'll be there at 6 and then get in my car and come over here to
At
see the
7.
Tri-M. Yeah, for 7.
Because we
But-
have to hear Reese and Charlie sing.
That's right.
Oh, my
But it
God.
would be, so tough, like Crystal said, for a parent
Right.
who wants to spend the whole evening at one or the other to do both. You just can't.
Right.
Like Jeanette, you're judging, I believe, tomorrow?
I'm hoping to.
I am too.
You too?
I am too.
Yeah,
So-
so that's hard. That's hard for both of you.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
I have to say, I'm looking forward to it. That's one of my favorite events. Every year I gain a new favorite event, and that's one of my favorite events, is the elementary school science fair. And hopefully we'll have them again present this year here. That would be
Yeah.
great, some of the kids.
That'd be
Any-
good.
Yeah.
Good.
A couple things. I would like the board to, if anybody turns in a packet to run for the Board of Ed seat, I would like the board to send them an invitation to a board meeting to come and introduce themselves, say 3 minutes of why you're running and what you hope to do or whatever, just so that, again, I know a lot of people don't watch but maybe they watch them later or whatever, but I think I'd like the community to know who it is who's wanting to serve on the Board of Education.
Will
So,
the PTA do another?
I don't know,
meet the
they
candidates?
haven't decided, and right now, I
They
don't
need
know.
to do that.
I don't know if we have candidates.
Yeah.
So, there are 2 seats, as Jill mentioned, but I don't know who's running yet, so But I would like, if the board thinks it's a good idea, if you don't think it's a good idea, you could say so, other districts do it, and I thought it was a really,
I think it's a good idea.
a good idea.
I think it's a
So-
great idea.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. I saw today that Dr. Hochul is providing funding for electric bus charging infrastructure projects. So I was like, well, so it's getting, at least it's expanding, it's not contracting.
2 years are going to say this was a bad idea. I'm sure.
I met on February 27th with Senate and Assembly people, all of them very interested in what was happening in schools, interested in the issues that we're advocating for, so hopefully in the budget, that they'll push for the things that we think are important. March 8th, there's a understanding the state aid formula thing class. You have to register through Maureen, so if you are interested. And there's also March 18th, public access of developing curriculum, which might be really interesting too, but I think that's also, you have to register through Maureen if you want to. That's 7 to 9 by Zoom or Google, whatever. Anyway, that's all I have to say. Anything else? Ellen?
I'm going to try to be very nice about this. But your children go to great schools if they are fortunate enough to be in Putnam Valley with great programs. And for anybody to allow them to possibly not exist because you may be too tired to go out and vote, shame on you. Whose responsibility is it? Why is it everybody else's responsibility? Don't allow anybody to take away your right. Get out there and vote. And keep the good programs that we have without being apathetic. I don't want to hear how tired people are, okay? I'm 68 years old. I get up at 5 o'clock in the morning. I teach in another district. I come home, I'm in bed at 6:30. I'm still awake for this board meeting. And I have to hear, oh, I've got kids, I'm tired, I can't go back out. Shame on you. That's your responsibility. Don't complain when things don't go your way if you haven't went out and voted. Assert your civic right without an excuse. You had these children. Take care of them. Do the right thing by them. And vote. That's as nice as I can be.
Thank you.
Along with that, I always made it a point to take my kids with me when I voted.
Yeah.
And I still do. Like my older
Me
kids
too.
now that can vote, we go at the same time because it's important. It's important for them to see the process and why we do things.
Christine, my daughter, was up for my son's birthday yesterday, but she was talking about when we took her to vote at the elementary school, when you had the little lever votes and we had the machines and they got to practice in class. Anyway, she still remembers it. So
I just want to do a shout out, and hopefully I had the state right. The Putnam Valley Education Foundation is having their annual fundraising gala. I want to say it's March 23rd, Saturday, March 23rd. Talk about someone that supports our schools. That's the Education Foundation. So they bring a lot of activities and items to our school that are not covered in the budget that help out our district, our students, our teachers. So anyone that is available to either support them by attending the gala in person or by financial donation, I know it's appreciated on both sides. So remember that. And they do have a website that you could go and make a donation to.
it's PVEFNY.
We say this everywhere. I think it's PVEFNY.
Right, PVEFNY.org. Right. Okay, anything else?
Good to
So I'd
go.
like a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Happy March.
Very good meeting.
Happy March.